definitely see the play of private and public as well as home life. Maybe the home life aspect slightly less so in my approach to my work, but I think there's a strong relationship in my work and Steve's work about talking about personal items and identity and how that's formed, and maybe in a domestic space in a day-to-day way. And I think these images in particular, they are taken in my home space. That's where the titling comes from. The 1818 Kalorama was the address I was at. And in this case, it is the activity that's going on in there. It's not your typical, stereotypical home activity of baking or cooking. It's people having parties, large parties.
Which is also which is pretty stereotypical for the way that we were living at the time.
Yes. But I think, I guess the relationship I see really strongly has to do with identity and trying to negotiate how the personal identity is related to public identity, how that's built, how you build your own identity, and how you share that as well. So using my personal photo archive and then involving that into my artwork is as much an examination of my own sense of who I am and where I come from as it is a negotiation of what I provide to the public.
Is there a more specific way you're thinking about your identity? Because when I look at Stephen's work, I mean, and you talk about this pretty, you foreground this in your work, that it's about your sexuality, about this subculture within that sexuality, not just within that, but like, and that seems to be in questions of masculinity, and so those all seem foregrounded. But for you, David, it seems like it's more opaque what that identity exploration might consist of.
I guess it's sort of, Steve used the term index, referring back to like reusing his own work, and I think a lot of my work, even outside of this body, has to do with like an indexical approach to examination of myself, my past, my friends, my associations, places I've lived, in an attempt to sort of map out what it means to be in some ways. Because I think that there's a tendency amongst people to have a very strong sense of self, but the question of where that comes from, I think, is really interesting, and I think it's informed by a lot of decisions that we may not even be aware of, and how we form our own memories, how we associate with objects important or unimportant, and our actions often play into that. So, for instance, thinking about like the Broad Street project, where I went back to my hometown, I hiked close to 17 miles along what's essentially like a strip, a street that's entirely like strip malls, Blockbusters, and these sorts of places that goes all the way out from the city to the farmland. And it's definitely not a walking space. But it was a space where, as a child, it was a central artery in the city I grew up in, and I had a lot of strong associations with very, very arbitrary things. In the sense that, signs that I'd seen hundreds and hundreds of times that I sometimes have a stronger memory of than, say, ostensible friends. And that sort of situation. Well, it's a good. I think it's an interesting question of like how your memory is formed. Like why is it that you remember something that is supposed to be unimportant, and then at times you can't remember the important things, or why are you forced to remember things that are horrible when you want to remember things that are pleasant? And I think a lot of my work deals with looking at sort of the lesser items that create the greater landscape.